Welcome back. We're talking about cardiovascular disease and in the series of Your Health in Your Hands. Today, in this segment, before we end this program for today, I want to talk about diabetes. Again, it's a big problem among we Africans. I'm like, why is this always happening to us? Why? I mean, what do we do? It's happening, so we have to deal with it. So diabetes, in other words, high blood sugar, basically, essentially, there are two types. There's the type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is if you're born with diabetes. Type 2 is when you develop it over time, and that's the one we're really concerned about. What happens with type 2 diabetes is that your pancreas, which produces insulin, is producing insulin, but your blood vessels, your cells are being resistant to it. So I'm going to draw up here. So sugar is supposed to go inside here, and insulin facilitates the entrance of sugar from the blood vessels into the cells. What happens is that this insulin is not working as well, and so it blocks the entrance of sugar from the outside into the cells. So what happens? It means that your sugar levels in the blood begin to go up. Now, to you, that may not be a problem, especially if you don't have any symptoms. Say, if you're okay, you're not sweating and all that. Maybe in the earlier cases you won't have any symptoms. But if it's not well treated, if it's not addressed, this excessive sugar will begin to cause, guess what? Damage. And again, I think we've talked about this ad nauseum, so I'm sure you're tired of it. It's like you begin to cause damage to the lining of the blood vessels. And so you're going to have jaga again as a result of excess sugar. But not only that, what the body tries to do is, since insulin is not entering, the sugar is not entering the cells, your body now sends the sugar into fat cells. So these fat cells begin to start growing bigger and bigger and bigger. Basically, the body converts sugar into fats, and therefore you have more fats. The problem is that this fat tends to multiply the most in the belly, especially in men, in women as well. It begins to concentrate in the belly, around the internal organs, around your kidneys, around your liver, around your intestines, and begins to accumulate. And if there's one thing bad about the belly fat, it is this. Belly fat, especially high amounts of belly fat, again, as we mentioned in the last segment, we begin to send out chemicals that actively, this is not a passive thing, actively cause damage to the lining of the blood vessels. So belly fat actively does this. Bottom line, you want to pay attention to your blood sugar levels. Don't joke with your medication. Don't take it for granted. And I see that all the time. I mean, first of all, we're not very aware about these problems. I mean, most people probably don't understand this that we've just explained. But in addition to that lack of awareness, there's also that complacency. That's it's not my portion, Joe. God will take care of it, and I see that too many times, too much of the time, and it's to be regretted, really, because you can actually address these things. I've lived and worked in the U.S. I've lived and worked in Nigeria, and I just see so much more complacency among Nigerians. Remember, diabetes, and we mentioned this before, diabetes is the second commonest cause of kidney disease and kidney damage. So when people go to the dialysis center or the dialysis hospitals, the number one cause is hypertension, but the next cause is diabetes. And again, that's because over a period of time, the kidneys, which are meant to filter out toxic things, so this is the kidney here, over a period of time, this excess sugar is causing damage to the kidneys, which are meant to filter out the toxins. So again, it's nothing to sneeze at. It's nothing to joke with. You need to control your blood sugar levels. You need to control your blood pressure levels, and your doctors can tell you how to do that. Again, it's not just about medication. You also need to watch your diet, and the dietitians can advise you on what to do about that. But also, you want to take nutritional supplements, because some of these supplements can actually help in terms of a process called inflammation. We talked about that. When did we talk about that? Does anybody remember? Maybe a few weeks ago. We talked about inflammation. Let me just say, why is inflammation important? Because some of the reasons why your sugar not entering into the blood cells is because the signaling, I don't want to get too technical, but the signals that allow for for the cells to obey insulin. Insulin is like the gatekeeper. Your cells, insulin kind of like puts the passcode. It punches the password and says, here, let sugar enter. One of the reasons the cells don't recognize that password or that passcode is because of inflammation. Yeah, I didn't spell that right. And we talked about that before. A lot of problems in the body. In fact, researchers think 98% of many of the chronic diseases that you have starts really with inflammation, and diabetes is certainly not an exception. So inflammation blocks the entrance of sugar into the cells, and therefore you can clearly see that sugar accumulates in the blood vessels and eventually can cause damage to the blood vessels, not just damage to the blood vessels, but also damage to the kidneys. And in addition, it will cause accumulation. Excess sugar will cause accumulation of body fat, especially around the belly, which again now causes more damage to the blood vessels. So it becomes really a vicious cycle. Bottom line, blood sugar levels must be normal. Blood pressure levels should be normal. If not, you're going to have atherosclerosis, you're going to have issues. So that is another of the things that we decided we wanted to talk about, especially with regards to the health of the arteries. Because as we've constantly said, the health of the arteries is dependent upon, and the health of your cardiovascular system is depending on the health of your arteries. So with that, I hope you've had a good time joining us with this cardiovascular series. Please join us next week. We're going to have a lot more interesting information for you to share. Be sure to go on our social media platforms and engage us. We will be glad to hear from you. Thanks again.